Well, welcome back to the Practical Church Podcast. My name is Dotson, and this podcast is all about helping you plant and grow healthy churches. Today, I'm going to share with you 7 reasons why your announcements are not working. So your church announcements that you share on Sunday mornings, hey, why aren't they working? And what are some things you can do to improve them? And as always, this show is brought to you in partnership with Mission Support. If you need help with a lot of back-end services, whether it's SEO, payroll, bookkeeping, websites, Google Ads, all these sort of things that, man, they're really helpful for your church, but can kind of be draining and time-consuming and maybe not best for your skills and gift set, you can check out missionsupport.com today. To love being a pastor, again, one of the best things about Mission Support is they do not lock you into long-term contracts. You can go month to month and use them as you see fit. At New City Church, we use them for our bookkeeping and payroll and have had a great experience doing so. So be sure to check out missionsupport.com today to learn more about how they can help you love being a pastor again. And with that being said, let's get into today's episode, 7 reasons your announcements aren't working. So church announcements are really nobody's favorite thing, and it's kind of like a necessary evil that you have to do to share with people what's going on. And unfortunately, because they're kind of no one's favorite thing, they can actually be done a lot more poorly than they could be done, just because nobody necessarily likes them, or they feel like they're a drain on the service, or you're not really sure where to put them in your service. It doesn't mean you shouldn't do the best that you can with them so that people will actually pay attention. So what I want to do is I want to share with you just 7 things that you can do, 7 potential reasons that your church announcements might not be working, and things that you can try and implement that might be better for your scenario. As always, take what works for you, leave what doesn't. Your church context is obviously different. Everyone's is a little bit different. And so, man, just consider, some of these things might be helpful if you're like, hey, we do this church announcement thing. It's awkward. No one pays attention. It's not good. I don't know how to make it better. Here are 7 reasons your announcements might not be working and what you can do about it. Number 1, they are too long and there is too much information. This is probably the biggest culprit for a lot of people, a lot of churches, is that they are much too long. They're like 5, 10 minutes, even more. And they have way too much information so that people have been trained, oh, I'm not going to pay attention to here. Oh, this is kind of awkward. Oh, if I go to this church and I know the person who's giving the announcements, it's fine. But if I'm new, or if I invite a friend and they're probably like, what is actually going on here? So I'm going to share in this episode some things that you can do to keep them from going too long and too much information, some practical things. But for now, I just want to say, again, every church is a little bit different. I just talked to plenty of pastors who kind of like, oh, this is like awkward and it's not really good and it takes too long. And I would say it's okay to keep it like 2 to 3 to 4 minutes. And I'm not saying what we do in New City is best. That's the path that we've always done in New City is a 2 to 3 minute, 4 minutes at the most. And we kind of restrict how many we actually do. One of the ways that we do that, looking at my notes here, making sure I'm not going to give away the future. Yeah, one of the ways we do that is we restrict how many next steps. We call them next steps at New City. So if I say announcements or next steps, it's one and the same thing. We restrict how many that we'll do at a time. So for us, we typically won't do more than 4. And that also includes every week. The first thing we mention is our Connect card and welcoming new people and giving them some information of what to do if they want to learn more. So that includes that. So after that, we'll have 3 at most. And we cut it off. Now, some other ways to do this is restrict the number you do. So I would say no more than 4. Also restrict what you're going to announce. So for example, if it's not relevant to the most of the church, then you shouldn't announce what's going on. So for example, if someone's got some niche thing, some small thing that they want to do, and you're announcing everything, that's another issue that announcements go so long, is that you've allowed anyone who has anything they want to say to be in the announcements. And so that's too long. And so really, if it's not relevant to most of the church or something specific that we want to announce, we won't announce it. I'll give you like an example. Right now, as I'm recording this, we have a men's event happening this Friday. And so the last 2-3 weeks in New City, we've included our men's event as part of our next steps. Now, part of the reason we've been doing that is because it's summertime as I'm recording this. We don't have as much going on church-wise. And so if we don't have as much going on church-wise and we still want to do maybe 3 to 4 announcement slots in total, we might throw in some things we might typically not. If it was like I don't know, October, November, and we've got a lot of stuff going on as a church, we wouldn't be announcing the men's gathering every week because it only is impactful to half the congregation. Now, there's some discernment here. Maybe you want to start a new men's ministry or a women's ministry or something like that. You could do it. But for example, that's for us because we have like, here's the max we're going to do. And we're not going to announce things unless they're really relevant to most everybody, or at least they are, like, for example, when we do our community group kickoff in September. We're going to announce that for a few weeks in a row. Now, a lot of our church might already be part of a community group, but it's still relevant to everybody. So I would say restrict the number of announcements you're going to do, number one, because that will definitely help you kind of pare down what you're going to say. And hey, is this going to impact like over 75% of our church, or at least they would have the opportunity to participate? So for example, in October, we've done a trunk or treat many years in a row as a church, and 80% of our church does not go to our trunk or treat, but it's available. We need people to sign up to serve. It's a big community thing. And so it's something that while 80% of our people might not sign up to serve at the trunk or treat, they certainly can. And it's a big event we do. And so it's open to them whether or not they're going to take advantage of it. So I would just say one way to really get it shorter is to limit the number you're going to do. And then part of the way to limit is like how many. And then part of the way to limit as well is like, hey, here are the types of things we're going to announce. Now, depending on the size of your church, it kind of differs. I feel like the larger your church gets, the more selective you have to be with your announcements. However, I would say this is where like a lot of church plants, smaller churches, or I should say normal sized churches, get this wrong, is because it's not a massive church and there's enough things that are going on, people want to talk about it, is that you just like share tons of things. So I would just say the biggest reason is they're too long and too much information. One of the ways to cut that down is to restrict how much you're going to share, how many things you're going to share, and then also restrict how much information about that event you're going to share. So when you're doing announcements or next steps, you don't need a 5-minute, let me explain what is going to be happening at the men's event. The main thing people need to know is when it's happening, how to sign up, and just a very brief overview of what's actually going on. It's kind of like, when you do a preview for a movie, a movie preview might be 2 minutes long and the movie itself is like 2 hours. It's just like kind of like enough to get you interested. Or, if you're watching previews at the actual movie theater and it's say, hey, this coming soon or releasing on this date in theaters. They're not sharing like everything about the movie, but they're saying, hey, here's when it's coming out, or here's what you need to be on the lookout for more information. So part of it is you don't need to share everything. It's just like, when is it? How do people register if they need to do so? Like, what is the next step you're asking them to do? And got to kind of limit that. Now, part of the reason it's too long, too much information goes with the second point. And the second reason your announcements aren't working is because there's no training or feedback. And there's no training or feedback. So for the person that's giving the announcement, or for persons, if you have multiple people that maybe rotate, giving announcements, you don't train them on what to say. So they're kind of left to kind of like, well, I guess I'll just kind of go for it. And again, if people are not used to public speaking and they haven't maybe done even announcements before, it is very awkward. I always tell everybody the first time we have someone do announcements, the next steps, we kind of walk them through how it works. Obviously, if you go to a new city, you know how it looks from the audience perspective. And so you assume, well, this is not that hard. It is super awkward for everybody the first time they do it. I always tell them it's going to be awkward. Then after the first time they do it, we kind of debrief and I'm like, how was it? And they're like, yeah, it felt super awkward. Because it's just like you feel awkward even if other people don't. And so there's no training for feedback. So another thing too that we've got better on in the city is that we don't let people do announcements or next steps unless we pick them. And if they don't do well, then we don't keep them in the rotation. Now, what I have learned is the main reason why people don't do well at announcements is because they don't prep. So I can think of all the various people have done next steps over the years at New City Church, and only one of them who actually prepared just wasn't good at it. Everyone else, maybe they prepared in the beginning, or they kind of tapered off, or they never really prepared. And it's like, if you're going to be awkward and not know what to say and like keep looking at me, like asking me, hey, Dylan, did I say everything? That's happened too. It's like, that's not what this is. And it's really not hard. And so if they're not prepared, then they don't do well, and we don't keep them in our next step rotation. Now, one of the ways you can train them, one of the things that's helpful is what I do, because I'm kind of over this part. Whoever's over for your church, they can do this too. Is every Thursday, I email the next step person. Here's what the next steps are, with a couple of sentences for each one. And then on Sunday morning, I kind of talk through, hey, here are the basic things. Again, because of our people have done it, most of our next steps people have done this so long, they've kind of been trained. But I send them out ahead of time. Here's what they are. Here are the main 2 or 3 things I want you to highlight, and then feel free to say whatever else you want. Because part of the problem is too, it's like you'll hear the next steps. You don't tell them what to say. You can't get upset with people if they're kind of rambling on and they're not sure what to say, or you haven't talked them through. Here's how it works. Here's how many we do. Here's the way that we do it. So there's no training. There's no feedback. I would just say before they start doing it, talk them through. Here's what it looks like. Another way this helps is like for us at New City, either do a talk through or a run through. So I've shared many times on this podcast too, the importance of doing a run through. Right now, we're kind of this in transitionary time where we're not portable. We're still getting everything ready to go there. So at New City right now, we're not doing a run through in the mornings, Sunday mornings, but we are doing a talk through. So basically what's happening is we're getting there. The band's practicing, doing all their thing. And then at some point, for us, I guess the time is only relevant forever. It's different for different churches. We have a service at 10 o'clock. So at 9:15, we do a talk through, which means at 9:15, we talk through the entire service, the transitions, everything. And then we run just the transitions. So at like 9:20, we start the service, our 2-minute countdown, our call to worship, and they just do that. And then after the first song is typically where we have our next steps. So they'll go to the end of the first song, and we'll go from the end of the first song, the next steps person will run next steps, and then the confession, and then we'll hit all the other transitions. What's relevant for here is that we actually run our next steps every Sunday. So people actually talk through on stage before the service what they're going to say, and we tell them we want you to act like this is actually a service. This is helpful. Again, now most of our people that are currently in the next step rotation have been doing it for a while, so I don't really have to pay that much attention. But when somebody's new, that is when I'll pay attention during the run through, the talk through, where they actually do their next steps to say, hey, try to say this a little bit differently. This is how it works, and do this a couple of times so that people actually have training and feedback. Here's how it went. You can't get upset if it's awkward and weird if you never say anything about it. So my recommendation is send out the next steps during the week. Here are the couple of things I just want you to highlight, and then sound encouraging, invite people to do it. Didn't actually do a run through, and then give feedback after the fact. Here's how it went. Here's how you could do better. At the end of the day, it's not the end of the world. And I'm not trying to say you need to have some perfect performance, but one of the most important things for us, at least for the next step time, is for new people to fill out a Connect card. And if the next step time is awkward and weird, people will just not fill out Connect cards. But if they feel welcome, it's very clearly explained. Hey, what do I do if I'm new? The chances of them filling out a Connect card and getting more information, actually getting them in our follow-up process, which is really important for us, happens if next steps isn't awkward. So there's no training or feedback. My recommendation is tell them ahead of time what they're going to say, actually run through it on Sunday morning. And when it's their first few times doing it, be very clear, hey, we're going to talk through how this went so that I can help you grow. So number 2, no training or feedback. That's why your announcements aren't working. Number 3, announcing stuff too far in advance. So again, one of the ways that we kind of limit too many things is, generally speaking, we only announce things that are 2 to 3 weeks in advance. Now, there, of course, are exceptions. Christmas, Easter, this trunk or treat thing we do at the end of October, we start announcing that a little bit earlier because we need people to sign up to serve for it. So there are some big event exceptions. But generally speaking, if it's too far in advance, then they're not going to listen. The other problem is when it's too far in advance, you start announcing something 6 weeks in a row, people just don't care about it anymore. There's no sense of urgency to actually do it. So, for example, when we take 3 community group breaks a year, and then we do 3 sessions of community groups. So each session before a community group start, we spend the 3 weeks leading up to the first kind of week of community groups talking about community groups. Now, we could talk about community groups all throughout the year, which is fine, but there's something different to be like, hey, we're about to have a new session. Now's the time to sign up. It feels like there's a deadline, although people can join a group whenever, but it feels like there's a little bit of a deadline when groups are starting up. And so actually announcing groups fewer times and in a condensed period of time actually leads to more signups. So I would just say, one of the ways you can restrict, hey, we're not going to announce these things, is if it's more than 2 to 3 weeks in advance, people are not going to take it. They're not going to mark it on the calendar. They're not going to do anything anyway until it gets a lot closer. So don't waste your time, talking about these things. And again, this is one of the reasons that announcements take forever, is that we're announcing things that are 2 months away, and then we're announcing it every single week, and then nobody's paying attention. So number 3, announcing stuff too far in advance, with some exceptions. Generally speaking, my rule of thumb would be, you announce things that are within 2 to 3 weeks. Announce them every single week when they're within 2 to 3 weeks, and you'll actually get more action on them. Number 4, the fourth reason your announcements aren't working, a thing to change, is that you should have one next step per announcement. So what can happen is, especially when you drone on and on and on about all the information about the event and what's going on, at the end of the day, people just need to know when it's happening and what you want them to do. That's what they need to do. So there needs to just be one next step, whether it's, hey, sign up for this, or it could just be, hey, mark your calendars. Let's say Christmas is coming and you want to start letting know about your Christmas services in the beginning of December. And yeah, you might need people to serve and stuff, but it's more than anything, you just want them on the calendar. Just say, mark your calendar, or be on the lookout for more information. Maybe you've got some something big coming up, a big announcement or some big update coming, and you want to like keep people in the loop, but you don't have all the information yet, say, hey, this is going on. We'll know more in a couple of weeks. We just want to keep you updated. Whatever it is, I would just say they should have one next step. So for example, someone's new to a new city, their first next step is to fill out a Connect card. For our men's event that I mentioned here a couple of times, their only next step is to sign up because we're, doing barbecue. And so we need to know how much food to get, that sort of thing. So the next step is just to sign up. Their next step might just be to mark their calendars. So again, part of the way to reduce how long your announcements take is to share what's happening, when it's happening, and what is one thing you want people to do. Just give them one thing, not three things, not four things or whatever, because then it just gets convoluted and people don't know what you're actually asking. So one next step per announcement. If you do that, your announcements will work much better. Number 5, there's no guardrails on what to announce. So again, you just announce too much stuff. So this goes back to what I was saying in the beginning. You need some guardrails. Guardrails for us, again, are within 3-ish weeks. They have to apply to the majority of people. There are some exceptions. Again, if there's not as much going on, for example, so we're sharing this men's event like 3 weeks out, which is not typically what we do because we don't have as much going on during the summer. But that's it. 3-ish weeks, they have to apply to a majority of people. Generally speaking, that's it. So things like community group, or maybe you've got a chili cook-off or some big fall event or whatever. That helps you kind of reduce the too much and too long if there's actually guardrails on what to announce. That also makes it a lot easier when people are asking you, hey, can you announce this thing? It's easy to have like categorical decisions. Like I already say no or yes to this based on these parameters, and I don't have to explain it or give like, well, we announced it for this person, but not for this person. No, our thing is like, if it's not relevant to the majority of people and it's not coming up soon, we just don't announce it from stage. Fortunately, because we've been doing this for a while, we really don't get that many people asking us, hey, can you announce this thing from stage? Because this has just been our rule. And so when you implement it, you might get some pushback at first if your kind of style has been like, well, what's going on? What can we announce? And it's kind of like a free for all. Here are the things, because again, we don't want to bore people. We don't have too much information, and we actually want people to take legitimate next steps. You need to have guardrails on what you announce. One reason your announcement might not working is you don't have any guardrails. So it's like, whatever. Again, our guardrails are within the next 3-ish weeks, and they have to apply to the majority of people, or it's something that we just want the majority of our people to know about. No guardrails on what to announce. Number 5, that's one reason. 5th reason why your announcements might not be working. Number 6, you are giving too much weight to the different announcements, to the difference announcements can make. You're giving too much weight to the difference announcements can make. Now, the longer you've been doing this, the more you realize announcing something from stage doesn't actually move the needle all that much if there's not already conversations, momentum, other things going on outside of the Sunday morning announcement slot. This is really important, though, for people who just think, if you're not doing ministry all the time, you just assume, well, a stage announcement, if I can get this announced from stage, that a lot of people will sign up. If you've been doing this for a while, that just because you announce something from stage, it does not mean a lot of people are going to sign up. So what's happened for us, like in the past, because New City's we're not a big church, is we've had people that want us to announce certain various things. And one of the reasons we give other parameters is to fit the parameters. And also I've had conversations like, just to be honest, announcing is not going to make that much of a difference. So you might have this thing you're trying to start, or this thing you're going to do. If you don't already have some pre-momentum built in, or some personal one-on-one conversations, or already have some people already bought into it, announcing it from stage isn't going to change that. So if there's some momentum, then maybe we're going to go ahead and announce it. But if people are assuming the announcement is going to start the momentum to make that thing happen, it's just not going to happen. And because you know this, it can help you be a little bit more selective about announcements, because at the end of the day, they don't move the needle all that much. And so if it's not relevant to the majority of your people, then you should announce it. So I'm going to give you like a real example. Like literally, as I'm recording this right now, this week we don't really have much going on in the next 3-ish weeks. Part of the reason is for that is like we have this open spot on our church calendar for the school, and so we're still trying to get some things set up with the school, some serve days or drive or whatever, and so we're trying to like save some time for that. So like literally this week, we don't have anything coming up in the next 3 weeks that's like relevant to everybody, and so what we're doing is not even going to have an announcement slot. The only real thing that we want to announce is the Connect card moment, which we always talk about at the end of service anyway. And so instead of doing announcements just to throw stuff up there or just to do the Connect card, we're actually going to skip it all together, which is, we like literally never do that. It's just how things work with our move. So I just want to say guardrails will help that happen. You need some guardrails, knowing that there's not going to make that much of a difference anyway, means we're not just going to like randomly throw stuff up there and then make what little difference the announcement slot does have. We're not going to minimize it by throwing stuff up there that's not relevant anyway. So You just understand, just because you announce it, it's not going to make that much of a difference if there's not already some momentum or some vision behind what's going on anyway. And so the random things that people want you to announce from stage, again, if there's not any movement going there, announcing from stage isn't going to create the movement. The announcements from stage just helps what's already going to be happening. So you're giving too much weight to the difference announcements can make. Therefore, you're announcing way too many things. You don't want to do that. And then lastly, last but not least, number 7, you do them at a bad time in your service. So there really is no great time to do announcements or next steps, but I would submit to you there are 2 of the worst times. So an ideal, I mean, starting your service off with announcements or next steps is great because like it doesn't really cut off any momentum. You don't have to like go from a song to announcement or anything like that. The downside is, so many people are not in the auditorium when the service starts, or they're coming in as they start hearing the music for the first song. And for us, because we always start our next steps with the connect moment, starting the service with announcements, which we do every once in a while, and starting it with the connect card isn't really helpful because we want like more people to hear about it. So anyway, you could start the first service. The plus is it doesn't like mess with the flow of the service. Downside is not everyone's in there. The worst 2 times I would say to do announcements are right before the sermon, especially having the pastor do the announcements, or the person who's about to preach do the announcements, which a lot of churches do. Because my big thing on this is when you're preaching, the only time you have everybody's attention is in the first couple of minutes of the sermon. And excuse me, if you waste the first couple of minutes of the person who's preaching's time on announcements, you're already training people to check out. So one way to fix this is to, if this is the flow how you currently do it, do not have the person preaching give the announcements. If that's where you have like the announcements right before the sermon, don't do it, because at least when there's a change of person, there's a little bit of a reset of attention. Don't do that. But so yeah, for sure. But if you have to do that, make sure it's a different person, not the same person preaching. But I'll say, like, to me, I think that's the worst time is right before the sermon, because you're already losing attention by going over things, especially if your announcements are too long. It's like, all right, now I'm done with announcements. Now listen to the sermon. That's not a great place. I would say that's the worst spot to do it. Now it's easy because it doesn't like break up the flow of other things. But in terms of attention, I wouldn't do it. And then I also the second worst place I would submit is at the end of service. Now, at New City, we do briefly hit Connect Card, Weekender, and Giving at the end of service. And then our bottom line, you are sent, whatever. But it's like less than 60 seconds. It's all like really quick things to end the service. The problem is if you end the service with a bunch of announcements, some people are like checking out and not listening anyway because the service is done. And B, you can leave them with focusing on the announcements as opposed to what happened during the service if you spend a lot of time at the end of service with your announcements. So what we generally do at New City Church is after the first song, or somewhere in between. If you do more than 2 songs before the sermon, whatever. Our general service flow on average is this, which again, things can change, but if it's helpful, we do call to worship song, next steps, a time of confession, song, then the sermon, and then 2 songs at the end. And then, our next steps person comes out and closes the service. And there's, some other things going on there, but that's the general flow. So typically we do it after the first song. And that's what we do. Now, it's not the best time, but I do think, generally speaking, I typically would go before, at the beginning of service or after the first song is what I would do next steps. And if your next steps don't take forever, it's not too disruptive anyway. So you're giving too much weight, or sorry, you having a bad time of your service, that could be helpful too. That's my recommendation. Maybe at the beginning of service. I will say this, if you start with the announcements at the beginning of service, you definitely want to make sure somebody's playing behind the announcements. Now, I would recommend somebody play behind the announcements anyway. So that's what we do. We typically have the piano or a guitar, acoustic, something like that, because that also helps reduce some of the awkwardness. If you have someone who's not communicating with a lot of energy, it kind of fills the room out. Another thing we do is we play behind them. So I would definitely, if you start your service with announcements, which I again would recommend you playing behind the announcements anyway, you definitely want to have somebody playing so like people know, hey, we're starting, come on in, and kind of fill the quietness as well. So all that to say, 7 reasons your announcements aren't working. I'll reiterate them again. They're too much info and too long. There's no training or feedback. You're announcing stuff too far in advance. You have too many next steps per announcement. You just need 1 next step per announcement. There's no guardrails on what to announce, so you announce too many things. You're giving too much weight to the difference announcements can make, so you announce too many things, and you do them at a bad time in your service. Here's my observation for this episode. It's also kind of in the form of a reminder, and that's this. You need to remember that people can't say yes unless you give them a specific ask. People cannot say yes to anything you want them to do unless you give them a specific ask. So you can see this a lot of ways. For example, if you're planning a church and you ask someone to join your launch team, what does that actually mean? Like, what are you actually asking them to do? So some people have an issue growing their launch team, and this is my issue when we plant a new city. So I try to other pastors think this better than I did. Is what is it you're actually asking them to join, especially if you're not launching for another 6 months or something like that? What are they actually asking to join? If you don't actually give them specifics what to say yes to, they can't say yes. If you want to serve in a ministry, you can't just say, hey, we need you to serve more, or we need more people serving in New City Kids, for example, or we need more people serving on the greeting team. You need to say, okay, but what are you asking them? Like, how many weeks, a month are you asking them to serve? What time are you asking them to get there? I'm not saying you need to give all this information, like if you're doing a next step from stage, but before people can say yes, at some point this information needs to be communicated. If you want to give money to a church plant, so for example, maybe you're raising money for a church plant or initiative that your church is doing, instead of just saying, hey, we need to raise money, you should ask people for specific amounts. Like, what is it we're actually raising, or what is the target we're actually raising money for? Not just like, hey, we're generically raising money. I think people get this on like generally speaking, they get like, people can't say yes to something unless they know what they're saying yes to. But in the church world, if we're not careful, we know what we're asking them to say yes to, but they don't know what they're saying yes to. And that's where things can become problems. So I would just say, if you're struggling to get people to sign up for something or to give for something or to get momentum behind an event and you need help with it, part of the reason might be, it's not that people aren't willing to do it. It's that you have not been clear what you're actually asking them to do. So if you're asking them to serve or to give or whatever, what specifically is it to join your launch team that you're wanting them to do, so that they can actually say yes or no? People can't say yes unless you give them a specific ask. Well, today's personal growth tip is this idea that patience is most effective while doing. Patience is most effective while doing. Let me give you some examples. It might not yet be time to start the company, but you could start getting feedback on a prototype. It might not yet be time to plant a church, but you could connect to a church that will train you. It might not yet be time to make that move, but you could talk to people who have already done it before you do it, and about how they would approach it, knowing now what they know, knowing what they know now. So people who have already done the thing, how would they do differently? What would they've learned? And you can start trying to take notes and get preparing yourself. You see, if patience involves only planning for the future, with no action at all being taken, then what's happening is you're just waiting. And this is where people get frustrated. So patience is not doing nothing. If patience involves only planning with no action, then you're just waiting. Doing the work while patiently waiting for the outcome you desire will lead to results. So for example, again, a ministry example. If you're not yet planting yet, or you're interested in church planting, this does not mean, well, I just need to wait another 2 years. And magically in 2 years, I'll be ready to go. No, what this is I'm going to talk with church planters. I'm going to ensure I'm at a church that like wants to plant churches. I'm going to get trained. I'm going to do something, even though I'm not doing the big thing, I'm going to do smaller things to get me ready to do it. If you're not ready, you might not be ready to perform in front of a crowd, whether it's like an instrument or a comedy sketch or whatever that is, whatever you might want to do, but you can practice the thing that you're doing so that when it's time to perform, you're actually ready. You might not be preaching yet, right? So maybe you want to preach more. So you might not be preaching on Sunday mornings, but you can do things to communicate in public. You can say, hey, let me do the announcements. Let me lead a small group. Let me lead a serve team huddle. Any places you can get where you're, kids ministry, where you're talking in front of people. You might not yet be ready to preach on a Sunday morning, but that doesn't mean just sit around until hopefully one day you're ready to preach. It means do other things while you are waiting. And so I would just say patience is most effective while doing. Don't just sit around and assume. Again, a little soapbox for me in ministry is we kind of assume like, well, waiting and patience and not doing something or setting a far out timeline is more holy than just doing the thing. Now, there might be legitimate reasons why, you're still 2 years away from starting the church plant or starting to gather a launch team, all that sort of thing. And while that's true, in order to be prepared in 2 years, you need to be doing other things by training yourself. So again, patience is most effective while doing. If you're just waiting for the sake of time to elapse, you're not actually going to be prepared. The only way to be prepared is to actually do things that will prepare you. So today's ministry question comes from a church planter I was talking to last week, and he was asking this: how can I get more of our people to serve on Sundays? So they're a pretty new church, and so they actually need a lot of help, which regardless of the size of your church, you need a lot of help. And I would just say this: here are some things that we have learned at New City. I'm not saying this is the best or the only, but if you're like, hey, we need to get more of our people serving on Sundays, what can we do? Here's some things that we've done. I'm gonna give you, I think, 4 things. 4 or 5 things. Yeah. Here's some things. Number one, you need a clear onboard or a new person process. So if somebody's going to serve and you want them to serve well, they need to know like what they're signing up for and what's going on. And there needs to be some sort of clear onboarding process. For a lot of churches, especially small to medium sized churches for church plants, it's like, hey, just show up and like maybe shadow somebody. The problem is, even if it's someone who's doing something like greeting at a door, if they're just shadowing somebody and the person who's shadowing doesn't do a good job, or you just assume, well, here's the expectations for what it looks like to hold the door and nobody's shown them, then you can't get upset if they're like on their phone or they're talking to their friend and not kind of ignoring people as they're walking through the front door. I would say some sort of clear onboard process or a new person process, whether it's, hey, when you're serving, we do something in a new city called the Weekender, where we have like this onboarding process. It's a Friday night and a Sunday morning. So, they get on board a process. It could be as simple as like a Zoom call, like a 15-minute, hey, this is your first week serving. Let's chat on the phone just so I can talk you through what it actually looks like. Now, if it's a bigger position that requires more training, then they might, maybe it's a little bit more intuitive. So if someone in the band, they got practice, or maybe someone who's running slides or sound, obviously it takes a little bit of training. So there's a little bit there. But I would say for all your processes, hey, if somebody signs up to serve, it needs to be clear what their next step is and what it's going to look like for them. Second thing is you need to be clear on scheduling. This is something that I think a lot of churches miss. Is obviously everyone kind of knows that churches need people to serve, but they're not sure what that means. And if they come from a church where they were really burnt out, they're really going to be hesitant to serve because they think, oh, well, I was burnt out here. I served every single week. I don't want to do that again. So you got to be clear on like what it is, like what's the rhythm, how often you're asking them to serve will help you get more people to say yes. And of course, and I would say, get more people to serve if you're very clear, hey, we actually don't let you serve every week. That's not what we want. We don't want you to serve maybe once or twice a month or whatever it looks like at your church. Be clear on scheduling. Another thing I would say is don't just announce it. You need to have conversations, because most people will do it if they actually have a conversation about it. So again, going back to like the whole announcement thing, we give too much weight to announcements. You can say, hey, we need people to serve, but you should also have like one-on-one conversations. Like, hey, what would you feel about doing this? How do you think about doing this? What I have found over the years is that many people are willing to do things and they just assume for whatever reason they're not qualified to do it. And it doesn't matter how small a thing is. They just think, well, someone's better than me. I'm not holy enough or whatever. There's so many times I've had conversations where people were like genuinely interested in doing something, but they just thought like, well, it can't be me. So I would say, again, especially if you want your announcements on stage to be important or to be impactful, I should say, you need to have conversations. So announce it from stage. I mentioned this in the last Practical Church episode with us being portable and having more people sign up for the the setup team. It was not just announcing it from stage. It was also following up with conversations. And we got way more people signed up who were happy to serve, who never would have signed up if we only announced it from stage. So have conversations with people, like let people know, here's our needs, here's what's going on. And I'll also say this, don't schedule people every week. So one way to get more people to serve is not to schedule them every week, and to be clear about that up front. We don't let anybody serve every week. Part of the issue we've learned over time is pretty much everyone who's like, I should say everyone, a majority of people who are really excited about this ministry stuff and want to help out at their church say, hey, I want to serve every week. We let them serve a lot. And then eventually they just like quit altogether. Like they don't really serve less. Like this is just too much. And so like we are very like, you can't serve every week. Now there are some people at our church who serve a lot, and it's kind of obvious they really like to do it and they enjoy it and they're not being burnt out. But generally speaking, it's like, what happens is someone comes to your church for the first time, right? And they're like, this is amazing. And they want to serve and they want to jump in. They're going to get burnt out very quick if you don't like pull in the reins. So I would say don't schedule people every week. And those 4 things are helpful. Again, clear on board process or new person process, clear on scheduling, what you're actually asking them to do, what's going to look like. Don't just announce it, have conversations. And then don't schedule people every week. Those are some things that I found to be helpful to get more people to serve on Sundays. So as always, man, thank you so much for joining me today on the Practical Church podcast. If you want more, you can go to Facebook if you're on Facebook and join the Practical Church Facebook group where people are asking ministry questions, get real practical feedback. I think there's like 2,500 people in there, so it's going to be helpful for you. Also, if you want to go deeper in ministry and feel less stress, be sure to check out Mission Support. Mission Support is our partner that makes this possible every other week that we do the episode. So missionsupport.com, payroll, bookkeeping, SEO, websites, graphics, all these sort of things, videos, man, they do a lot. And again, I would just say they're not overpriced and they don't lock you into a contract. So you use them as you need them. And that often what you'll find is some of the stuff that you can contract them out to do is actually cheaper than hiring your own staff person to do that very same thing. So check out missionsupport.com. They can help you love being a pastor again. And as always, if you listen to this on the podcast version, on the audio version, we're on YouTube as well, where you can get YouTube clips and the video version of the show. And until next time, I'll see you on the Practical Church podcast.